Softening leather usually comprises the physical manipulation of the leather fibers or the additive of conditioners, oils, or other formulas to help make the fibers more flexible and thus appear and feel softer to the touch. Now, there are several main methods for softening leather. Some are going to happen in the natural course of use, and some are going to be more induced by the wearer because they want a more worn-in, softer feeling sooner. The ones that are generally safe for the leather are going to be a little less aggressive and take longer to implement, and the ones that may damage leather can help it soften sooner. Because essentially, leather getting softer means the fibers are either stretching or breaking. If they're stretching from use or getting nourishment from conditioning, that's going to be normal in the course of wear and use. If they are being broken down and thus making them weaker and then softer, that may damage them in the long term, but you may get softer leather in the near term. So we're going to look at examples of each of these approaches and exactly what could be tried to see if you get the similar results. The first approach is conditioning. So leather naturally is going to lose some moisture and the oils and fats that are in it. So periodic conditioning is actually something that's recommended. And here's a good conditioner that is made from primarily natural ingredients. And to condition leather, it's really simple. You essentially get some of the conditioner, put it onto a lint-free cloth. Make sure that you have it on there evenly so it doesn't apply too much in any one place. And what I'll do is I'll take a second sample here so we can compare everything to the first, and then we just apply it on top. And what I'll do, I'll put down this piece here to keep everything off of our workspace. But yeah, we essentially just continue to apply this conditioner to it. And as this conditioner sets in, it's going to begin to penetrate those fibers and add in a little more flexibility and a little bit more softness. Another thing to keep in mind too is the type of leather that you're working with. For example, if you're working with like a suede or a nubuck, that may respond a little differently to some of these methods than a conditioning. But in general, conditioning with a proper conditioner for your leather type, and if it's a gentle conditioner intended for that, that will generally help in the long term keep the leather supple and soft. So it'll take some time for this to settle in, but once it has the proper nourishment from a good conditioner, this leather should feel and be a little softer than our original sample. So next up is applying water to leather, especially vegetable tan leather. When softened, it can also be used to receive things like stampings and carvings, that the leather is going to be more receptive to receiving and keep the details when these fibers are soft. So for example, that's going to be a temporary softness until that water evaporates. So to do that, we'll get some water, and then we essentially can soften our leather by applying the water to it. Now we could do that with a number of ways. It could be a wet cloth, it could be a spray bottle, and you could even dunk this right in the water as well, depending on how much you want it to get in there and how soft and flexible you're looking to get it. And then once that begins to dry, you're going to see we're going to get a softer, more flexible leather because the water is penetrating those fibers, as compared to our original one, which is still going to be a little stiff. Another option is to simply stretch the fibers. This is similar to what we call, breaking in if you're wearing new shoes or new gloves or any kind of a new leather item, because at first they're stiff. And then from wearing them and the movements, those fibers begin to stretch and flex, and this weakens and breaks down those fibers in those areas. So now these fibers are stretched and they have less structural rigidity and integrity than they had before. This makes them feel a bit softer when worn and touched, and also more flexible. So for example, if we take this piece here and we just really flex it. And obviously the more flexing you do, the better. Like if you're wearing a new pair of shoes, you know, and you're walking around, you may flex that, you know, literally thousands of times in a day. You know, and if you wear that for a week or so, you know, you're going to get, you know, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of flexes in that material. And that's going to stretch and weaken those fibers in those places. Though, in the interest of demonstration and watching things, we're going to flex this now. And you can see, here's our original, still pretty stiff. And then here's just from a few minutes of flexing. You already get a little bit of a bounce to it and a little more flex. So stretching is another way to help leather feel soft. Another option is to weaken the fibers from the inside out. This is often done by applying a very harsh cleaner or conditioner. There are some products for leather that are intended to soften them, yet also can have some negative impacts long term. This is primarily in the case of pH. So for example, there are popular cleaners like saddle soap and even some mink oil and neatsfoot oil. They're going to have a higher pH than leather. And while pH itself is a different discussion fully to dive into, the idea is that the further apart cleaners are on the pH scale from leather, the more of a reaction they're going to have and the more they're going to weaken those fibers over time. It very likely won't be noticeable immediately at all. It'll happen over months and years, and then you kind of get that leather you've had for a long time and it's soft and broken in and kind of floppy. And if someone was using harsh cleaners and conditioners, that may be one of the contributors to it, along with some other things, you know, like wearing, flexing, and the usual breaking in. So for example, there's a cleaner here that if it's applied to it, it may clean some things off the surface, though over time, it could lead to a breakdown of some of the fibers inside of it. So while you may get an immediately great impact, it may lead to some less than desirable things long term, unless you're looking for them. Next up is applying heat. So heat from something like a hair dryer or a heat device or a flame can help soften those fibers because the heat is expanding them. And when they're expanding them, they get more flexible. And then if you flex it while they're warm, it's going to lead to more stretching. And if that's the goal, that can help. So depending how long it's done, it may make the fibers more flexible, a little bit damaged, and then feel softer. So for example, here's a heating device, and it essentially blows focused hot air into a concentrated area. So this can be used to soften this sample up. You could also use, you know, your basic hair dryer on the warm setting and just keep it on for a little while till the leather starts to get a little more flexible, a little more pliable. Before this, I did just that on this piece. And so we could see our original, which is still kind of stiff. And then our heated one, which gets a little more, it's already kind of cooled off a little bit, but it gets a little more flexible and you kind of get a little more of a bounce to it than our stronger one, which kind of is a little stiffer. This, we still get a little more of a bend. So with more heat and more time, you definitely get a little more action in there. And then method number 6 is going to be applying solvents. So solvents are going to be some chemicals. Sometimes they are natural, sometimes they are synthetic, and they're pretty harsh. And the idea here is that they're going to essentially weaken and damage the fibers. And in that process, making them more flexible. So we'll put down this here, and we'll do a demonstration. We've got 2 items here. One is going to be an isopropyl alcohol, also known as rubbing alcohol. Another is acetone, also known as nail polish remover. This is a pretty strong solvent. It's going to do some stuff to some things, and you want to be very careful with this. Even though it's pretty popular for nail polish is a strong substance as well. So you can see how impactful this can be. So we have 2 cotton pieces here. First we'll do the rubbing alcohol. Just put a little bit on it. And then here we come on the sample and you just kind of rub this in. This will evaporate likely in not too much time. But just the harshness of this on the leather fibers is not going to be good. And it's also because the alcohol will evaporate. It'll bring some of the moisture from the leather out with it, and that will dry it out. So if using this, it may be a process of, applying the alcohol, letting it evaporate, and then reconditioning it, because the alcohol can start to help break down those fibers, and the conditioning give it a little more of that moisture back. This is going to be much more of a long-term process, because the alcohol, it doesn't like spontaneously combust the fibers. It's not going to instantly weaken them, although it will start that process slowly. So if you're really in the long game for some like worn-in soft leather that mimics decades of use, this could be a method if you want to invest a lot of time. The next one is our acetone. So we'll open this up and we'll put it on a cotton round, and we just make sure it's not anywhere, because it'll mess up some stuff. All right. So that'll get in there, and very similar to the isopropyl alcohol, this will evaporate and leaving behind some potentially damaged fibers. So if you look here, here's our sample round, here's our leather original sample, and then here is our solvent sample. And it's still drying, so it's not going to be like this forever. But you can even see some discoloration and things like that, where it's rearranging some of the tanning agents that were used. So these are going to be pretty harsh, and they're going to do some things. But if used repeatedly for long periods of time, it should help to start break down those leather pieces and then give you a softer, more flexible leather. So when looking to soften leather, it's helpful to consider what the intended use will be, and if one wants to cause permanent damage to the fibers to get that result, or if proper conditioning alone will help reach that goal all by itself. If you have any questions, let us know. If you have experience trying this or any other tips to share, we'd love to hear them. And there you have it. Until next time.